Hello and welcome to week 4. This week we will be talking about assessment tools and practical applications. And what I mean by that is we want to talk about how we demonstrate that students have met the learning outcomes we've been talking about, both institutional learning outcomes, program level, course level, and the individual class learning outcomes. So we have so far discussed what is assessment at that high level and how we perform those functions. We have talked about who cares about assessment, who our internal and external stakeholders are, and we have also talked about how we develop and align assessment goals across institution, program, and course. So in this week, we will talk about the elements of an assessment plan, and all of these elements are going to be included in your final plan for assessing a program or an institutional learning outcome. So this will be helpful, I hope, for you as you begin working on your final project. So this website here from George Washington is a very good one to describe the assessment cycle. So I have used their graphic here, so please visit that website to explore more of this information. But the elements of the assessment plan include first identifying the student learning outcomes, and then identifying measures that you're going to use to gather data on how students are meeting those outcomes. We then have to implement those data gathering strategies and then evaluate the assessment data. So the final step, of course, is taking action based on that assessment data. In your final project, you'll be mostly focusing on what might happen as a result, or how will you decide what actions to take based on the evaluation. So I want to break these down just a little bit. When we think about learning outcomes this week, we're going to use discussion 4 to discuss the outcomes you're using in your final project. So it could be that you need to create your own learning outcomes. It could also be that you've identified a program for which you want to evaluate the existing outcomes. However, if they already exist, it doesn't mean that they are perfectly written or could not be improved. So it could be that you want to revise those learning outcomes, and all of this is hypothetical. So you can do whatever you'd like to these learning outcomes, given that they are improving and not making them worse. So the second part, identifying measures, we will also be talking about this week in discussion 4. We've already talked about summative and formative assessment, and we've also talked about direct and indirect measures. So we'll talk about this week how to map those to your learning outcomes. And you want to make sure that they are mapped to specific goals. We will also, in the assignment, be talking about Bloom's taxonomy, and so I'll present that here. You may have already heard about this in other courses, and I don't think this will be surprising information to you, but Bloom's taxonomy includes 6 levels at which a student can be assessed. So at that very base level, that purple level, students might be asked to remember, to recall basic concepts, and you would use these types of verbs when you're writing the objectives for a course. So say you want someone to be able to define the basic terms in an intro psych course. That would fall under remember. And then the levels go up progressively. So understand is more than just remembering. You have to then be able to synthesize information, to explain further, to translate certain things. Application takes it a step further, and it requires that there is some demonstration of the knowledge that you have. And then analyze, evaluate, and create are when you get into the higher level courses, especially in higher education. You're going to have less of the remember and understand, and you're going to be getting into more of the analyze, evaluate, and then create. So a senior capstone project, for example, is going to most certainly be heavily reliant on evaluate and create. So you can use some of these verbs. There are other sites that have more as well, and this is from Vanderbilt's website. I have attached that on Module 4, so you'll be able to find that as well. So in your assignment this week, you are going to indicate what measures you will use, and then also indicate what level of Bloom's taxonomy that fits under. The final steps of the assessment cycle we're going to cover in the next couple of weeks. So gathering, evaluating, and then acting on the data will be covered next week, and then in the final assessment plan. There is feedback on your topics in the assignments area, so I encourage you to look at that feedback. And this is just a reminder that these are the project focus options, and I believe all of you have selected a proper plan at this time. And this is in the discussion, but I just wanted to review this, that there are kind of some guidelines for participation this week. So the first initial post I would like you to make is to share about your own final project. What are you planning to do for your assessment plan? And so for your classmates, please identify the program that you plan to assess, and then share 2 to 3 learning outcomes. So there will likely be more than that in your final assessment plan, but you only need to share 2 or 3 of them. You can use it as a brainstorming session, or you can use it as a refining time. And then you will post on other people's learning outcomes with 2 different things. So suggestions for improvement will help them to refine those learning goals. They'll help them to become more SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And then also you can comment with suggestions for measures they might want to use. So is it an oral presentation that would need to be used to assess communication styles in a particular course? What suggestions do you have? So that is the end of the content for this week. If you have any questions, I am happy to answer it as we go through the week.